You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another amazing show lined up for y'all. Today, we're going to talk to an amazing guest today, Larry Rifkin, and he is the author of this amazing new book, No Dead Air. You want to make sure you listen to this. He is a longtime Connecticut broadcaster, and he's going to share his story about his amazing career in his reflected title, No Dead Air. Without further ado, I just want to welcome you, Larry, to the show. So how you doing?
Thank you. Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
So, Larry, yeah, it's great to have you on this show, man. Thank you for your time being here with us today. You have an amazing story about Barney. Everyone knows PBS, and everyone knows about that famous character, Barney. When it comes to that show on PBS, how did you discover Barney? And tell us the backstory with your daughter, because she has a role in this situation as well.
Yeah, well, I think if anybody really wants to understand Barney, they really just have to sit down with a 2.5, 3, 4-year-old and really watch them watch Barney. And that's exactly what I did on Super Bowl Sunday, 1991. You're probably a young guy. I don't know if you were even born then, but I certainly was about 39 years old at the time and had this wonderful 4-year-old daughter, Leora. We went into a home video store in our little town of Prospect, Connecticut. And voila, she picked up Barney and the Backyard Gang, a home video that Cheryl Leach and Kathy Parker and Dennis DeShazer were producing down in Texas, where you are, down outside of Dallas in Allen, Texas. And I went home with her with that video. And she was not a big videophile, I've got to tell you that. She was somebody who would watch occasionally. But there was something about this video of Barney and the Backyard Gang, A Day at the Beach, that excited her to no end. And I went in to watch because I had to keep rewinding the tape. In those days, we're talking about VHS tape, let alone DVD. So I'd go in and I'd sit down and took a look at it myself, and I saw various characteristics of a program that I thought might have some possibility for PBS, but the production values were a little early on. They clearly were not as crystalline and sharp as we made them over the years. But nonetheless, there were key elements, music underpinning all of the activity, these wonderful young people involved with this terrific character who, in fact, was less neurotic than Big Bird. And I knew that at the time, PBS was looking for a new children's program to pair with Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And the reason that they were looking for something new was the fact that this was really when cable television was beginning to take a foothold in the entire television marketplace. And we had to compete. We had to be faster and quicker and more determined as Nickelodeon was coming on the scene. And so PBS put out this call for a brand new preschool series, and we answered the call at Connecticut Public Television by bringing Barney forward.
You have rich history in programming, and specifically over 30 years, nearly 30 years in programming chief for Connecticut Public Television. So you know how this stuff works. You know how programming works. How was the ride, if you will, being able to be a part of history? I mean, this is a big deal. Everyone, I mean, even I know Barney. I am kind of young, but everyone knows Barney.
Well, that's a great question, because a lot of things, on public television end up staying in the public television cocoon and never come out. And so the people who are devotees and aficionados of public television, they will know a lot of programs. But if you ask a lot of people who don't watch a lot of public television, they don't know what you're talking about. Barney became, as you say, a cultural icon. Did I ever expect that, Shemaya? I don't think I really did. How could I? Did I know it was going to be as successful? Well, I had a focus group of one at the time that I began to pursue this opportunity. And you have to understand the way the public broadcasting system works to imagine why was a guy like Larry Rifkin at Connecticut Public Television the one who actually brought Barney to television. And as I say in the subtitle to my book, No Dead Air, also the TV exec who saved Barney the dinosaur from extinction, because believe it or not, we were canceled almost simultaneous with going on the air. That's a crazy story, and I can certainly share that. And very few people understand what happened. But with that said, it was wonderful to be a part of a PBS system that was always experimenting. That's what I loved about programming a public television network in a state like Connecticut. You took risks, you took chances if you could. And the chance we took on Barney was a measured one, I want to assure you, because we didn't have a lot of money to spare. And if I made a big programming mistake, it could really put us into terrible financial straits. But with Barney, the character had been developed. All of the R&D had been done by Cheryl Leach and Kathy Parker, looking at the marketplace of videos that were available at that time, determining what was working, what didn't work, and where there was a void or a vacuum to be filled that they felt that Barney could. And so it was really just a wonderful confluence of things that came together to make this the incredible success that it was.
Once again, listen to On Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Larry Rifkin, and about his book, No Dead Air, all about career reflections from a TV executive who saved Barney the dinosaur from extinction. And you teased it earlier about Barney was canceled. And I'm not going to make a joke there, but Barney was canceled by PBS. And what is the true, real story that a lot of people may not even know about?
Yeah. And in fact, we were, my daughter and I, in the Peacock documentary that recently aired called I Love You, You Hate Me. And they didn't even touch on this at all. In fact, they didn't even really get the origin story correct. They made it seem as if I tested Barney on Connecticut Public Television and it went from there. In fact, that's not the way it occurred. We brought it to PBS, and about 4 months after countless meetings and back and forth and changing the name and changing a lot of other elements of the production, adding a lot of beef to the production staff, doing a whole range of things, we did come away with $2.25 million from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PBS. We took that money and took a year to build 30 episodes of this new series, Barney and Friends. But at the same time that we were doing that, they were also testing 2 other series. And I think that gets lost in the mix as well. They were testing Sherry Lewis, who had that lamb chop that was very famous in the 50s and the 60s. And a lot of folks at the time who were television critics when we came out knew about Sherry Lewis because they grew up with her. And then we were also up against Shining Time Station with Thomas the Tank Engine, which obviously was a very popular and important property. So the 3 of us went into this competition. We came on the air last in April of 1992 on the 6th of the month. I got a call at the end of May saying, Larry, thanks for the 30 episodes. They're still running. However, we are not going to fund any additional episodes of Barney. Well, I could have taken that as the final answer, but I didn't. I brought Barney to Connecticut. We raised $50,000 on air one Saturday morning. And then we brought Barney the dinosaur over to the Hartford Civic Center. And I've got to tell you, a lot of people imagine that there'd be 600 people, 1,000 people, whatever. There were 6,000 children there to meet us. And it was bedlam. It was like Beatlemania for the infant set. It was absolutely remarkable. I sent that videotape all around the country to other programmers because PBS is not really a network. It's a conglomeration of stations, and we have a lot of say in the programming decisions. However, we had given up the fact that we used to vote on all the programs that would end up on PBS. We gave authority to the chief program executive. And that was brand new for PBS to do that. But we knew we needed faster decision making because of what I had mentioned earlier about cable television. So one of the first decisions made by this chief program executive was to cancel Barney. Well, by the end of the annual meeting in San Francisco at the end of June, with all the efforts that I had made, pushing, prodding, politicizing the activity, because I knew we had something that was building, something that was growing day by day in terms of impact. And a lot of the programmers from all the major markets around the country, Miami, Philadelphia, Dallas, they felt and saw the same thing happening. And they helped me in a chorus questioning the decision that PBS had made and pushing back on it. At the end of the meeting, Jennifer Lawson, who was the chief program executive, said, I will begin negotiating. I've heard you, and I'll begin negotiating with Connecticut for another 18 episodes. And then we went on with 12 seasons that were packaged around 17 years of programs.
And when it comes to the success of Barney, what is the core of how Barney became so successful?
That's a great question. Again, one of those questions that was never really asked or answered, though I tried to in my 3-hour interview for Peacock, and I do in my book. I think what really makes Barney so unique is that it really was built for the child. We made no pretense that it was being written on 2 levels for the child and the adult. Other series do that. It was very linear. It was very repetitive. So that's what a young child needs. I don't know if you have any children, but I have a grandchild now, and I'm reminded when she picks up the same book 5 times, I want you to read it over and over again. There's nothing that a child likes more than the comfort of knowing where she is or he is. So when Barney would come to life at the beginning of every episode, the I Love You song, all the way that we wrapped it up every day, Barney's mannerisms that were the same with every show. I mean, that was really comforting to a child. We had the singers, Dorothy and Jerome Singer of Yale University at the time, evaluate Barney for its impact. They did a lot of children's television research. And what they said was that Barney was nearly a perfect preschool program. And there were 100 learning moments in every show. They were emotional. And there was a lot of emotion among the children and Barney learning lessons about family, about community, about their commitment to each other. Then, of course, there was a lot of movement with all of the music and all of the songs that, again, were so important to the success of the series. And then there was a lot of cognitive development because Cheryl Leach and Kathy Parker and Marianne Dudko at the time, who was working with Kathy and Cheryl, they were all preschool educators. They understood the mind of the child, and they were very cognizant that if you're going to entertain a young child, you need to be in the business of education. That's what they wanted to do. They're a sponge at that moment. They want to learn. So they knew how to teach, and they knew what to teach, and they knew how to bring this to television in such a bright, vibrant way. I will say that in the documentary, one of the things that they did quote me on and allow me to quote myself as I was on camera was to say that Barney was really, in many ways, Fred Rogers going electric. I mean, if you think about that, a lot of the ethos of Fred Rogers is truly embodied in Barney.
Once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to Larry Rifkin, and you can get his book, No Dead Air. You can get it anywhere you can get a book. And by the way, this book was published independently. What was the backstory in that?
Well, I went with Amazon KDP, and the reason some people wanted the Barney story, Other people wanted the Yukon women's basketball story because we brought that to television, and that led to women's athletics, development on national television because ESPN is here in Connecticut. They saw the success, the wild success that we were having with Yukon women's basketball, and of course now women's basketball, the WNBA, college. You can see it so much on national television. And I do believe that much of that came from the success that we had with the most successful local franchise, Yukon women's basketball, in PBS history. So, with that said, people wanted that part of the story. People wanted the Barney story. I wanted to tell my story because I wanted to inspire people who might be thinking about going into communications or media, that there's no one route to do it. I didn't go to Los Angeles. I didn't go to New York. I stayed right in my home community in Hartford, Connecticut area. And I was able to really have a national impact. And that was somewhat unique. But I really wanted to honor people who really had helped me along the way, who believed in me at times when I didn't believe in myself. So there were a lot of things that I wanted to do with this book. And, it really has been more of a Connecticut book in many ways. I've done tons of book talks here in the state of Connecticut, but because of the documentary, and I tried to, get on shows like yours around the country and let people know that there is a story to be told about Barney and Yukon, and just a guy who never really planned on it, but has had a wonderful career that was so fulfilling and so enriching for me, and I hope for others.
And speaking of success, we mentioned earlier about you having nearly 30 years as programming chief for Connecticut Public Television. It also CPTV has amassed over 50 Emmy Awards in the Boston, New England competition.
I really had, my goal was really to run one of the most exciting programming shops in my state. I wanted to tell the big stories in Connecticut. So we did documentaries on Mark Twain, who was in Connecticut for a good part of his career. Stories that, people in Connecticut know about the first nuclear powered submarine, the USS Nautilus, our identity as a state. When I think of where you are in Texas, everyone can think of Texas and what does Texas represent, and everybody with cowboy hats. I know it's not true, but the point is that you at least symbolize something. Whereas the state of Connecticut, we have a difficult time with our identity. And I've got to tell you that the only programming that could tie the entire state of Connecticut together were some of these serious documentaries about our history, about the flood of 55, about the Hartford Circus fire, those kinds of things. But nothing brought us together like Yukon women's basketball, because Fairfield County in Connecticut is really influenced culturally and media-wise by New York and New York stations. And then Boston ripples in the northeastern part of Connecticut. So Connecticut really has an identity crisis that I think I was trying to change and help to tie together. And I think a lot of our programming in that era did that.
And with media communications, you have been doing a lot of things with FM radio. You also are doing a weekly podcast, a twice weekly podcast, AmericanTrendspodcast.com. What's it like staying busy? Because you think at this time you just chilling in Hawaii.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm not the one who likes to chill in retirement. I'm one who likes to be what I call casually employed. And I hope people will check out AmericaTrendsPodcast.com, where we tackle really serious topics with A-list guests on social and political trends in the country. And I think they will find incredible content there. And I did radio. I went back, anybody of my age and vintage who went into media. I'm now 70 years old. I can't really believe it. I still feel about 35. And we all started in radio. And, I tell the story and I honor my dad a lot in this book because I was brought up a radio brat. I was the kid who his father, being the general manager of the rock station in a city here in Connecticut. And I would be the one to tell my dad who was good, who wasn't, why, who you should hire, who you should fire, that kind of thing. So I wasn't the most popular kid on the street, but I got into radio after my dad died when I was 19. And then I kind of moved away from it a little bit, took a big detour into television, and then came back to radio after I took an early retirement and did 7 years of talk in my home community. And I made some political changes there, direct district election of aldermen in the city. I really was able to affect some real change. And I was a different kind of talk show host. I assure you of that.
Yeah, imagine if you never touched television. It's probably safe to say there would be no Barney.
Well, it's true in a sense. And people who were involved from Texas said that if I had not come along and really discovered it and saved it, you probably never would have heard of Barney the dinosaur.
So once again, listen to Refocus Radio, talking to Larry Rifkin, and you can get his book, No Dead Air, Career Reflections from a TV Executive Who Saved Barney the Dinosaur from Extinction. Last question. When you read that subtitle that I just read, what does that actually mean?
Well, as I was talking about, I mean, if I don't push back and acquiesced to what I consider to be a really faulty decision on the part of PBS that was not informed by any empirical data, that didn't sense the cultural awakening that was happening with Barney among the preschool set in America, that would make it one of the most successful children's programs of all time. I mean, if I didn't push back and we just accepted our fate, it would have been a shame, number one, for the children of America and around the world. But secondly, it would not probably have been restored, and it would have been a footnote in history rather than the substantial impact that it had.
If you want to learn more about Larry and what he's up to, you can go visit his website. He has a personal website as well, LarryRifkin.net. You can also check out his podcast he does, AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. I want to say thank you, Larry, for taking time talking to Refocus Radio.
Thank you. And by the way, I think you'll find No Dead Air for somebody who's thinking about media, maybe a young person who's a little lost along their route, that this might inspire them, because there's no set path. We all take our own, opportunities. And so again, I hope that they will enjoy it. It's an easy read as well.
Awesome. Yeah, you can get No Dead Air anywhere you can find a book. Amazon's probably the easiest one. So head out to Amazon and go get that book, No Dead Air, by Larry Rifkin, Career Reflections from a TV Executive Who Saved Barney the Dinosaur from Extinction. And also go his website, LarryRifkin.com, and check out his podcast, AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. I want to say thank you again, Larry, taking time in your schedule talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Continued success.